Hello and welcome to the Beer Chef. Today we will be looking at Mangrove Jack's Irish Red Ale. It will not have slipped your attention that this is actually a 40 pint extract kit. So we're going to need to break it down to brew it and condition it in our pint of 3. So my intention here is to divide it into 3. I don't know if you've seen one of my old videos there where we took a Scottish export, divided it into 4. Although it made sense, 40 pints, divide it into 4, 4 times 10. In actual fact, though, in reality, that dividing it into 4, the beer came out pretty washed out, pretty flavourless. So it was not a very good result at all. So breaking down these 40 pint kits, I always recommend now that you divide them into 3, not 4. Still works out perfectly fine, value for money. Of course, this divided by 3, this was about £22. We've got some beer enhancer here that I'll be using with it. So you're looking at probably £30 in total, which will be £10 per kit, if you like, per 10 pint kit. Now, of course, these 40 pint extract kits, unlike the dedicated 10 pint kits like the Pinter Fresh Press or the Mangrove Jack's 10 pint kits, these 40 pint kits do not include the fermentable sugars inside the liquid malt. So you have to decide what you're going to add to them for your fermentables. And basically, I mean, 2 simple choices here. You've got sugar, brewing sugar or regular sugar, or you can use beer enhancer, which is a sugar and a powdered malt mix, basically. So sugar and powdered malt mixed together. So I'm going to go for the beer enhancer, which is sort of like supposed to give a slightly better, improved flavour, and it will cover the fermentable sugars as well. So that's it for the chat. Let's get on to action, and let's get the boring part out of the way first. Split this 40 pint extract kit down into 3, and then we can press on and get the fermentation and the brewing going in the pint of 3. So let's get on with it. Okay, I'll start off with these 3 jars. They've already been washed and set on the side here, but I'm going to sanitize them. So one at a time, I'm going to dip them in the sanitizer. I've got 3 litres here. I'll fit them in only one at a time. I'll put the jar in, leave it soak for perhaps 30 seconds, a minute, and then I'll take it out and just pop it upside down to let it drain on the counter. And I'll do that with all 3 of these and leave them sitting on the counter, nicely sanitized, ready to go for when I need them. There you go, this is the last jar now. All 3 have been dipped in the sanitizer for about 40 seconds each. And that's it, all 3 of them are ready to go now. We'll come back to them after we've opened up the packet, took the yeast out and the hops, and then we'll get it warmed up. These are like double layered packets, whereby there's an inner layer that they tend to put the little extras that you require. So we'll pop that open and have a look inside. We have Irish Red Ale hop pellets, some instructions, packet of Liberty Bell yeast, M36 Mangrove Jacks, and that is probably everything. Yep. So now I'll get some hot water in this saucepan from the tap just to give me a head start. Now I'll put the gas on, I'll get it up to about 80 degrees C, and then I'll put the liquid malt in to get it warmed up before we transfer it into the jars. Okay, we have just hit 80 degrees. I'm going to turn the gas onto its lowest setting, get rid of the thermometer, and pop in the extract kit, the liquid malt. We'll leave that sit for 5 minutes until it warms up, loosens up, and then we will continue. This has had 5 minutes now in the warm water. You can see it's starting to loosen up nicely. I've got my 3 jars here, all now sanitized and waiting for action. So I'm going to estimate here that there's going to be about 650 grams per jar, but of course we'll iron out the differences at the end if need be. And I'm just going to pinch the back, and I'm going to try and make this as clean as possible and go for about 650. see how that works out. I'm happy with that. So the next step for me is one of these jars, of course, is now going to be used straight away to go ahead and put the fermentation on the go in the pinter. The other two I'm going to vacuum seal. These are vacuum sealed jars. I usually use the Kilner jars, but I bought these recently. These were 750 milliliter jars, which is quite a convenient size. So I thought I'd try these. So the warm water that I use to soak that, I'm going to get these jars in and get them heated up and vacuum seal them. So I'll show you how I do that next. Okay, this water is still on a low heat from before. I've got a little grill here that I'm going to put inside the hot water. I'm just going to drop that inside, just so that the jars are not directly on the bottom of the saucepan where the flame is. Now, there's a trick here to mastering these vacuum sealed jars. When you actually put them in the water to heat them up, close them finger tight like that, no tension at all, and then do a 180 turn off so that the lid is very loose, and then pop it in the water. Same with this, I'll just finger tight, 180 off, pop it in the water. Now, just by coincidence really, the water level there, I will just come in close for you and show you. The water level there is just perfect, and that is, I don't want it actually covering the jars, but what I do want it covering is the liquid malt inside. So that's the target here. We're looking for covering the malt but not covering the jars, because of course you don't want the water seeping inside the jars because the lids are so loose. So that's worked out just perfect for us, and the metal grill on the bottom is to stop the jars being in direct contact with the heat underneath the saucepan, to protect them from getting cracked or being damaged in any way. So what we're going to do now is slowly turn the heat up. We're going to move this on to a boil. When the water starts to boil, we are going to leave it then boiling for, just simmering for only about 5 minutes, and that is going to totally sanitize the contents. It's going to sanitize the jars. It's going to prepare these jars then for the vacuum seal. And I'll show you the next step once we get this to a boil. As you can see, it's just starting to boil now, so I will set a timer for 5 minutes, put this down to simmer, and then in the meantime I will use that 5 minutes as well to get the pinter sanitized. The pinter's already been washed, it's sitting over there ready for sanitization. So when I set my timer for 5 minutes for these jars boiling, I'll nip over there, get it sanitized and get it ready for the next process. Okay, the 5 minutes is up. I have turned the gas off, and I will now remove both these jars from the hot water. Now the second step towards successful vacuum packing, you can see them lids have still got the press flexibility, but as soon as you take them out of the water, that's when you want to just use a little bit of kitchen roll, because these jars are obviously very hot now. As soon as you get them out of the water, that's when you want to tighten the jars. And then as these jars cool down, that's when the vacuum effect will take place, and you'll see that right now them buttons still press, but we'll check them later, and when they've cooled down on the side there, we'll check them later and see that the vacuum seal has taken place, and then they'll be good for 6 months. and I'll probably label them up later on and pop them in my cupboard. You don't necessarily have to keep them in a fridge if you vacuum pack them. One thing I would point out is once I break down a 40 pint set like this, I'm going to use this one today, but these are the two will probably sit around for ages, you know, because I'm always trying new stuff, trying different ideas. But if you intend breaking down a 40 pint kit like this and you intend to use these fairly quickly, you know, within sort of like 3 or 4 weeks, then I would suggest that you don't even bother vacuum seal them. Just put them in jars, use the one that you use for your brew day, and then just seal these up and keep them in your fridge. And they'll keep in your fridge fine for, you know, a month easier. So only vacuum seal them if they're going to be laying around for, you know, 6 months or more. If you're going to use them quickly, just seal them up, pop in your fridge. Okay, so now next step is I'll finish sanitizing the pinter, get that ready, and then we will actually get this into action and start with the enjoyable bit, actually getting the brew going. Okay, so now it's time to get on to the good stuff. I'm going to utilize this hot water that I vacuum sealed the other 2 jars with to actually heat up the one that we're using today. So I'll just transfer enough water in here. Saves me heating up more and it will be hotter than the tap. So I'll just pop that jar in there, take the lid off, get that warming up, ready for transfer. This is the saucepan that I'm going to be using. This is my 9 litre saucepan. This is basically what I kind of consider my extract saucepan. So any extract kits or pint of fresh presses they'll be done in this, and then my big 15 litre is what I use for the all grain. So basically I'm just going to give this a quick rinse off. I've got my bottled water here. I'm going to be using 5.5 litres today. I think this malt mix here, I think there's enough of this liquid malt to go for the extra ½ litre, get a little bit extra, and that's still within the capacity of the pinter, so it's all good. So I'm going to rinse this out, let that warm up, and then we'll start the process of heating up half of this water that is actually going to be the making of our brew. So here we go. This saucepan is now rinsed and ready. I will put about half of this 5 litre bottle into the saucepan. At this point I may as well get rid of this extra ½ litre as well, just for simplicity. Just a little bit more of that. Okay, that'll do, that's fine. So I'll get this heating up to 85 degrees C, just like usual, and this can nicely get warmed in the meantime, at which point we'll transfer. While my water is heating up, I'm going to weigh out 250 grams of beer enhancer. That is just a total guess on my part, to be honest. If it needs an adjustment, I'll make the adjustment when I do one of the, you know, the following 2. But my thinking is, because we've divided this into 3, not 4, it's likely to be a little bit stronger anyway, but I hope so, because the advertised ABV on this is 4.3%, and I'll be honest, I would prefer it if it came out at about 5.3. I've been more than happy with that little bit of extra strength. So it's just a total estimate here. I'm going to go for 250 grams of beer enhancer. And then of course I'll take the readings later on in the process and we'll see what ABV we end up with, and if it's too far off what we were hoping for, then I will make some adjustments moving forward. Okay, we are just coming up to 85 degrees C now, so I will take the thermometer out, flame off, and now we will go for the transfer. This should be nice and warm. It's been sitting in the warm water while this spring water heats up. This jar's not too hot, so I'll be fine to handle this with a cloth. So there you go, get it all in. If you like to rinse these jars through and try and get, you know, the stuff out that's stuck to the side, you can if you wish. Personally, I don't. I heat them up, I get out as much as I can, just like this, shaking it, and that's it. That's me done. You know, that's good enough for me. That's good enough for me. I'm gonna get the result that I'm looking for either way. So my spoon now is sitting in the sanitizer over here. Get this stirred in nicely. Give it a good mix. I'll give this a nice stir for 2 or 3 minutes, make sure it's very thoroughly mixed, and then I'll pop the camera back on for the next step, adding the beer enhancer. Okay, this has been nicely mixed now. I'm happy with that. So I will add the beer enhancer. Just give it a good stir as I drop it in. Dissolve it all well. You will no doubt have noticed that I've not actually looked at the instructions that came with this kit, but of course most of the instructions on there are not going to be relevant to brewing small batch and breaking this down, obviously, and not brewing in a pressure fermenter like the Pinter either. So there's not much point in reading the instructions, to be honest. There's nothing that they're going to offer me, so I'll just follow the instructions that I know to be the most successful. So there you go, the beer enhancer is now in as well. I'll give this a real good stir, make sure that I'm really happy that it's all thoroughly mixed in and dissolved into the water, and then I'll proceed to add the rest of my spring water. Okay, I'm happy with that now, and so now we can move on to add the rest of the water. This will go some way towards cooling it down. We'll give it a final thorough stir, take a quick sample for a gravity reading later on, and then we'll put it over into the sink, into the cold water, to cool it down to 20 degrees C, ready for pitching the yeast. I've given this a really good stir now after I put the rest of the spring water in, so this is the final wort and it's ready to go now. It's ready for action. Totally happy with that now. I'll take my sanitized measure jug. You've probably seen me use this before. Already been sanitized. I'll just take a small sample. Don't even need that much. That's fine. I'll keep that aside. Take a reading on that later. So now I'll move this over to the sink, preparing it for being cooled down. Prior to that, I'll just pop the lid back on, get my alcohol wipe, swab if you like. You've no doubt seen me use these before. Now that that's been cooled down with the final spring water, probably about 40 degrees C, you know, now we're getting now towards the temperature that it gets a bit risky. We've got to be careful now. Anything that goes inside the wort is a risk to infection, so anything that touches it now we will be sanitizing, but of course there won't be too much touching it now anyway, apart from this thermometer. So pop this in. I'll get the sink prepped with cold water and then shift this over. Okay, moving the wort over directly into the sink. I'll fill this up 3/4 of the way. You probably know the routine by now. Keep my eye on the monitor. and wait for it to drop to 20 degrees C, ready for pitching temperature. And in the meantime, if I have to change this water, if the water heats up considerably, then I'll just drain the cold water out and refresh it with new cold water. And I'll probably only have to do that once, and it will only take me, looks at the minute it's about 45 degrees C. It will only take 15 minutes to get this down to 20 degrees C, which is pitching temperature. So I'll see you in 15 minutes. While the wort is cooling down in the sink, I might as well use this time to get the hops weighed out and the yeast. I'll just use a little one of these alcohol swabs just to wipe down these, and of course whatever hops they've provided I will just divide by 3. So this is 20 grams, so we're probably looking at about 6 grams, 6.5 grams of hops per dose. There's one. I feel a little bit like a drug dealer weighing these out. And the last one. Right, so I'll just set that aside for later. Then we will pop that on there, get this reset. Get the yeast weighed out. I tend to just go for 7 grams. You're looking at about 6 or 7 grams ideally. So I'll go for 7. Right, so that's it. I'll get back to keeping my eye on the water. And these will be now nicely ready for us when we're ready to move on and get things going. As far as storing the hops is concerned, if you intend to use these within 3 or 4 weeks, then just pop them in your fridge, keep them chilled, and they'll be perfectly fine. But if you want them for long-term use, then put them maybe in a plastic tub, put the bags in a plastic tub perhaps, pop them in your freezer and freeze them, and they will last then, for indefinitely, for as long as you require, 6 months or more, and just give them 24 hours to defrost before you actually use them in your brew. Okay, we are at 20 degrees C now and ready for business. We will remove the saucepan now from the cold water, and as soon as the water drains clear, we'll get the pinter in position, ready for action. That's it, and we are now ready for the transfer. So let's go for it. Make sure your pressure valve is on number 5 before you put your pint into your sink, so that your wort doesn't start running away. I'll just give you a quick look in there again so that you can see, like in my last video, how that sieve and the transfer like that nicely oxygenates and foams up the wort nicely, which saves us basically having to mess about there with an extra step and shaking it up. So at this point I'm going to run an ice spindle on this one. I think it'll be interesting, just so I know if I've got to make any adjustments on the other two when I come around to doing them. So I'm just going to turn my ice spindle on. It's already been washed, just popping it in the sanitizer there. Now of course at this point straight away now we're ready to pitch the yeast. On this one I'm not going to bother bagging the hops on this. Often you know that seen me use the mini hop bags. This is a very light hop addition, 6-7 grams. I'm just going to go these straight in. I would say my limit for a dry hop in the Pinter 3 would probably be 20 grams. I don't think I'd go over that. And if I was going over 20 grams, then I think I would bag it, just for the risk of actually blocking up the pint somewhere and causing myself troubles down the line. But in this instance, it's a very light hop load, so I'm just going to go straight in on top of the yeast. High spindle in. Docking station and over. So there we go, that's all good to go now. My estimation for this is just a rough guess. Of course, I put the ice spindle in, so I'm not going to have to worry about it, but I'd probably say it's going to be 7 to 9 days fermentation, but fingers crossed we'll get it nailed in 7, straight into conditioning, and I'll probably go for 7 days conditioning as well. Final job of the day, take a quick reading for the gravity. Okay, the reading is 12.5% on the Brix scale, so I will put the specific gravity equivalent of that on the screen. I've written the Brix reading on my Pinter there in chalk, 12.5%, and I will just put my estimated date of fermentation completion, which I'm just going to put down as a guess at 7 days for now. So I'm going to estimate that it will be the 26th of the 4th, but we'll refer to the ice spindle and make our decision near the time. One final thing to mention, you can see that both these jars that we vacuum sealed now do not press. The clicker thing on the top does not go in, and that's just confirmation that the vacuum seal has been successful. So I will put them just in a cupboard now. They'll be okay in a cupboard. They don't have to go in the fridge once the vacuum sealed, so I can put them in the cupboard. I'll put a little sticker on top, give them perhaps a 6-month use by date, and just pop them in a shaded cupboard and come back to them at some point in the future. Get them brewed up and get them drank. So that is it for today. Brew day is complete. The only thing I've got to do now is clean up all the mess, and I will keep you posted in probably around 7 days as to how the fermentation's going and when we're ready to move on to conditioning. So I'll catch you then.
This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we have a problem.
Okay, we have a little bit of a problem with fermentation here. As you can see here on the graph from the ice spindle, 3.5 days into fermentation, it looks like the fermentation stalled for about 24 hours, and I was a bit concerned that that was going to go into a flat line and an attenuation of 60%. We were actually nowhere near complete. So therefore I looked at the temperature, which I thought was probably most likely the main culprit. The temperature at the time was 18 degrees C, which I think was slightly on the cold side for this ale yeast. So I moved the pinter over next to a radiator, gently rotated it to get some action on the yeast and to get it sort of like up and lively again, try and wake it up with the increase in temperature. In the meantime, I've ordered a heat mat from Amazon, which will be delivered tomorrow. I will set the pinter on top, pump the temperature up to 22 and see if we can get the yeast back into action. So as you can see, the heat mat has now arrived from Amazon. I opted for the thermostatic model because I thought it really was important that it had the ability to actually turn itself off when it hit the target temperature. I opted to put the probe just quite simply in between the dock and the actual pinter itself, but in the middle there you can just slip the probe nicely in the gap and just push it to the side of it. Now my thinking was that's as good a place as any, because as the actual beer heats up inside the docking station, of course, natural just through like thermo equilibrium is going to travel up into the liquid inside the pinter too. So it seemed to me the simplest route here was going to be to get a heat mat and just set the pinter on top. And as the actual liquid heats up, of course, the actual plastic dock will heat up with it. So I thought it would serve the purpose of putting the thermostat inside the gap there. So here we are. The current temperature is 20.8. I've set this at 22. And I will just confirm that that temperature is okay and it's a match for the ice blender when it heats up. So we'll get this warmed up and see if we can get the yeast back into action to finish off our fermentation here. Okay, so we are now at Brew website looking at the data from the ice spindle. You can see quickly here at the top that the original gravity is a match for the refractometer at 1.050. Current estimated gravity is 1.012. Current temperature is 20.5 degrees C. The attenuation is 76%, which is what I was hoping for in the end. I was hoping for around 75, so that's okay. The ABV estimate is 4.94%, although I think it'll come out a bit higher than that when we actually get the final gravity reading from the refractometer and put the calculation through a proper online calculator. So we'll do that later. So as you can see here from this fermentation line, if you like, the gravity here got off to a great start. The fermentation got off to a great start, should I say. The gravity started to drop immediately from adding the yeast into the wort. It progressed nicely along to 3.5 days, which is where I had a little bit of a scare. I thought that this 3.5 to 4.5 days, 24-hour period was a little bit of a concern that it might be actually a stalled fermentation. So at that point I gave it a bit of a gentle swirl and put it near to a radiator to generate a little bit of extra heat, and ordered the heat mat, temperature controlled heat mat from Amazon, which I put the pinter on top, and that done a great job. I will bring the temperature line here, I've got it deleted at the minute. I'll bring the temperature line back in. You can see here at 3.5 days the temperature has dropped down to and just above 18 degrees C, and I suspected that these low temperatures were what was causing the fermentation to slow down. So the most obvious thing seemed to be to get the temperature up to a more respectable level. A little bit of a swirl, try and get the yeast active again into fermentation, which worked a treat. You can see here when I got the actual heat mat on the following day and pumped it up to 22 degrees, everything was good again, and the fermentation then continued as planned, so we were happy with that. Later on you can see then 10 days it started to flatline about here. There's a little bit of a glitch on this area, but then it continued to flatline, so I actually think that active fermentation was complete 10 days in, at which point though I always leave 2 days extra. It's always good practice after you see fermentation come to a completion. The yeast is still actually metabolizing at that stage, although the gravity is no longer dropping. So at that point, the yeast is still doing fine-tuning, really cleaning up off flavors and ultimately improving the taste profile of the beer. So the extra couple of days, it always pays to have the patience to give it that little bit of extra time to work its magic, if you like. So at this point now, just over 13 days into fermentation, we're happy with everything that we're seeing here now. We can get this brew back into the kitchen, remove the dock and get it into the fridge for conditioning. So I'll see you back in the kitchen. Welcome back to the kitchen. The ice spindle there saved my bacon really, because I never would have guessed that it would take 13 days in fermentation to get the job done on this. So that's the benefits of using the ice spindle. When I do any brew for the first time, I always like to pop the ice spindle in to get a read on it, to give me an idea what I'm dealing with. The next time that I brew the other two of them, I might just try a different yeast anyway, which I usually would, because the packet that you get with the 40 pint kit only does one batch, and of course we've divided it into 3. A lot of people don't realise that you can actually buy the Pinter yeast packets, which I think are really quite handy. They on the Pinter website they come under spare parts, which is kind of like maybe a little strange way to advertise them. That's probably why most people don't even know they're there, but you can buy the yeast packets for £2.50 each. Now they're quite convenient. £2.50 is not bad because the 10 or 11 gram packets are usually, you know, £2.99 or £3.99. Some of them go even more expensive than that. So that's a pretty good price, £2.50. And of course, they come in 6 or 7 gram measurements, which are perfect for the pinter. There's no waste. So it's not a bad option. You know, I always like to keep a few of them in. I generally just get the ale yeast and the lager yeast, if you like, and keep them in storage, you know, ready for spares for occasions like this. You know that the yeast is going to be, if it's provided by Pinter, it's going to be quite robust. It's going to be tolerant to temperature fluctuations, and it's going to be tolerant to pressure fermentation. You know, so you kind of like know that you're going to be on a winner. Also, if you buy a couple of them, I usually buy sort of probably like half a dozen at a time. You know, 6 packets of yeast, and it's because it's so light, they don't charge post and pack. They send them post and pack free, which I think is pretty good. So anyway, here we are. We are now back in the kitchen. The pinter on this brew is sitting in the sink, ready to have the docking station detached. So let's proceed and get that job done and get it in the fridge conditioning. So here we go. I've had the pinter sitting here for about 10 minutes just to stabilize before I make the detachment. Take this docking station off. It's foaming away nicely there. That is going crazy. Now I'll put that aside. Give this a quick rinse down. With warm water. Okay, we will now get the new date put on this. I will work out the date. I will estimate 7 days for conditioning. I'll try it after 7 days, see what I think, and if it requires more time, of course, then it's no issue. You know, I'll leave it a couple of days after and go back and try again. Okay, so here we go, over to the fridge. And that is ready to go now for 7 days, and we can come back and get down to the good stuff, tasting it. Here we go for the final task. I've just taken off a little sample so I can take the final gravity reading. Okay, so the final gravity reading bricks is 6.3%. I will put the specific gravity equivalent of that on the screen, and then we will go to the online calculator and get our ABV calculation. We are now at the Brewer's Friend website using their online calculator. As you can see here, I've entered my bricks readings for the original gravity, which was 12.5%, the final gravity 6.3%, the wort correction factor here is 1.00, which is uncorrected, and that gives us an estimated ABV of 5.39%. Let's just call it 5.4%. So that's a decent result. That was off the back of 250 grams of beer enhancer. If you would like a reduced ABV on that, then I would perhaps suggest trying 150 grams of beer enhancer and see how that works out for you. So that is it on the ABV. Now let's press on with the process. Okay, our 7 days conditioning is finally done, and we are now in a position to get a little sample from the fridge and give it a taste and see what we think of the final result. So let's head over to the fridge. that'll do nicely. So here it is at last. It looks pretty decent. You know, it's very dark in colour. Mangrove Jacks describe this as full-bodied, rich and fruiter. Now, I'll be honest, that's not really the description of my ideal ale. In truth, I don't like these like festive beers, Christmas beers, and you know, like mulled wine and that sort of real deep fruitiness. But I was really keen to try an Irish ale. I've never actually tried one before, so I was wanting to experiment with what an Irish ale would actually taste like. So, you know, this is actually a new one to me, but it smells fine. It does actually smell fruity. It's got a fruitiness about it. It looks good, you know, it looks good and it smells good. So straight on to the taste, the important bit. It tastes exactly as it was described. It does taste full-bodied, rich and fruity. Ironically, that is exactly what it tastes like. It's actually quite a pleasant taste. You know, it's not bad at all. I'd say there's two observations here. This wouldn't be my ideal drink. It's not one that I personally would think, oh, I'm really looking forward to having a glass of that tonight. You know, that's just being honest and truthful. It's not. Now, this is one drawback of, you know, breaking down bigger kits into three. They're great value for money, and they are great alternatives, you know, to the pint of fresh press. But now I've got something that I can't say I love, and of course I've got another 20 pints of it sitting there now. So that's the trouble, and I've got 10 in the pinter. So that's the trouble. You know, the 10 pint small batches are great because even if you, I love to experiment, and even if you get one that is not really what your ideal drink is, you can persevere through it and then move on. Whereas with this, it's a little bit more of a commitment. It is great value though. I mean, if you stick with the ones you know and you love, then you're going to be fine. Like, but in this instance, you know, these. One thing I will say is these are going to be hanging around probably in my garage for a long, long time. So another observation of this is, I'm just going to have one more little taste. I think that the taste of this is slightly too concentrated. It's almost like it's a little bit overbearing. Now, this comes down to fine tuning the divisions of the split. Up to date, I've not done a great amount of experimentation with breaking down these bigger kits. But what I do know is if you divide a kit into four, it doesn't turn out enough. Now, here's an example of a kit that was divided into four. And the liquid malt in that, this was a Mangrove Jacks kit as well. This was a Hell's. Now, that inside there is 400 grams of liquid malt when it was divided into four. The final weigh on these, when it was divided into three, was 700 grams of liquid malt. Now, this extract concentrate is more concentrated than a pint of fresh press, so we can't compare them like for like. My feeling is that this taste is slightly too intense. The concentration is slightly too much, which may have contributed towards the extended time it took to ferment it all out. Now, my feeling is that as we move forward, if we're going to master this, we need to be not talking about how many times we're going to split it, but the weight of the split. So, for example, instead of saying try 3 out, try 4 out, we've got to narrow it down to a grammage. And my estimate for the ideal grammage off of these two experiments, as I just mentioned there's 400 grams in that, the 7 in that. That made a washed out beer. This is making a ale that is too intense. So my feeling is it's going to be about 550 grams is going to be the ideal weight of the liquid malt from the bigger extract kits to make a real good 10 pint brew in your pinter. So that will be my next experiment. And if you were to do this or to buy your favourite, I would recommend that you go for 550 grams. That will probably give you, of course, a bit of leftover malt from the pack. It won't be enough to do a fourth batch, but it will still give you 3 small batches for your pinter, which you've got to be happy with that. If there's a little bit left over and it goes to waste, you know, it's not going to be an issue. It's not going to be a significant amount. So that's my advice. You know, 4 out against 3 out. The winning formula is going to be somewhere in between, and I'm backing my money on 550 grams. So that's what I'll be doing the next time I split one of these packs out. I've already got a pack that I've bought. It's a IPA. You know, I know the flavour profile for the IPA. I know what I like from an IPA. So that's going to be a better one for me to judge. But I'm going to go in at 550 grams per batch on that and see the results. So the final verdict on this Mangrove Jack's Irish Red Ale is as follows. Yes, I'm afraid it does. It gets the big red thumb for me. I'm not looking forward to drinking 30 pints of that. I've got to be honest. I'm not looking forward to drinking 30 pints of this. Now, I would say that the result is good. The idea of breaking down these bigger extract kits is viable. It's a good idea. I think this, once I've fine-tuned it, and I can say to you, right, this much liquid malt, this much sugar, this is the result you're going to get. I think we're going to be on a winner. So we're heading in the right direction. But as this stands, if you like mulled wine, that type of flavour, you'd love this. You know, so this is down to my personal taste preference. This is not the beer for me. You know, I'm just being honest, it's not. But if you like the mulled wine and you like the Christmas ales and that sort of thing, you probably love this. Nonetheless, though, I still think the flavour is too intense. I still think if you do the Irish Red Ale, you should back it down to 550 grams per batch. And I think then you're going to get some very successful results. These kits, of course, are available in multiple different guises. It's not just Mangrove Jacks. And lots of kits comes with different quantities inside the kit. And that's why we can never rely on saying split it into 3 or 4. Some of these kits have got huge loads of the liquid malt in. Some of them have got teeny amounts. I would recommend that you stay away from the cheaper ones. You know, any of the cheaper ones that I've tried, to me, they taste washed out. The quality's not there. I wouldn't waste my time on them. I think you've got to be looking at, you know, 20, 24 pounds, you know, in dollars, that'd be probably, I don't know, 25 bucks, 30 maybe tops. You know, that's the price range you're going to be looking for when these extract kits start to get good quality. The real cheap ones, you can get some of them as cheap as sort of like between 10 and 12 pounds and stuff. Personally, I'd stay clear of them. I'd go for the better quality. And I think that you're going to be rewarded for a little bit of extra money. Now, you guys watching from the US, you know, this is available in the US, not in the Mangrove Jacks range, but you've got the Muntons, which is definitely available in the US. I will drop the links for these in the description for the video if you want to take a look. And you've got the Coopers, you know, there's the great selection between the Coopers and the Muntons. And when I looked on the US website, it was about 22 bucks. So it's good value for money, even in the US. You know, you're getting great value for money from this. Bear in mind that I use this beer enhancer for this, but of course the option to use regular brewing sugar or even just granulated sugar that you've probably already got in your cupboard will still work perfectly well. So you're not committed to the beer enhancer. I use that because I bought a big bag of it. I already had it sitting there, so it seemed to make sense to use it. But you know, you've got other options available. I mean, I'd guess that most people are going to have granulated sugar in the cupboard already, and if you've not, you can pick it up from the local supermarket cheap as chips. So there you go. All the links for everything that you see in this video. I will drop in the description of the video, so if you want to take a look at any of the stuff that I've bought or where I've bought it from, then by all means, dive in there, have a look at the links. I'll include the US links as well for the equivalent kits from Muntons and Coopers. Also, I have very recently, I mean literally just in the last week, YouTube have put a button on the bottom of my video. It's a thanks button. I'll pop it up on the screen now, you can see. So that's the first time that's happened to me. It's the first opportunity I've actually got from this channel to actually sort of like make any money out of it and have any support for the channel. So if you like what you see, don't be shy to hit the thanks button, make a little donation to the channel and buy me a little free beer. That would be most welcome. Keep me supported, keep the channel supported, keep me going and keep me doing these experiments. I've got a whole host of things in my brain. My brain is erupting with ideas and I'm trying to get these things out as fast as possible, and I will slowly but methodically work through everything that I want to get out there to you guys that I think will be of interest. So that is it. I will ramble on no more. That is the conclusion of this video. I hope you enjoyed it and I will catch you on the next one. Cheers.